I hope to have a full video of the Stage 1 audio build, which includes adding kicker KM-4 floor speakers and a Bluetooth amplifier underneath this seat, along with our plug-and-play RCA wiring harness that taps into the soundbar line, maybe by the end of the weekend. I do potentially need some of your guys' help. When I started this audio system design, I thought I had everything figured out. I found a way that I thought we would be able to bypass all of the noise happening in the dash, leverage the stock soundbar, and add double the power with our floor speakers and a Bluetooth amplifier. So on paper and on the workbench, this install should have worked perfectly. We have our Bluetooth media button on the steering wheel. We have the new amplifier control panel here for switching inputs and adjusting the volume. We have our Bluetooth amplifier fitting perfectly into this little spot back here, and all of our plug-and-play audio cables routing up high out over here and avoiding being close to the power lines. And yes, when I finally booted it up, I was excited to have more sound coming out of the front. These speakers have a great mid-range and a little bit more bass. Everything just felt clean and better. Some of the pros was that I could still use the volume to change the sound bar, as well as the volume inside of here for the amplifier to kind of help balance and tune the front versus rear depending on what you wanted. So that did work quite well. However, after living with it for about 5 days and driving with it, these little issues kept creeping up that I could just not solve and slowly added more and more frustration. The first thing that drove me crazy was that every time I hopped into the cart and was about to go for a ride, this voice comes on over the speakers saying AUX, and it's telling you that that's what the input that you're listening to on the amplifier. If we switch to Bluetooth, it will say Bluetooth. But every single time you start the cart and the amplifier receives signal, it broadcasts AUX or Bluetooth, and it is kind of annoying. I wish it didn't happen. I wish I could get into the cart and drive out without it saying AUX over my speaker. The next thing that drove me completely crazy was that because the cart didn't have a dedicated 12 volt and we were fully power cycling the amplifier by completely turning the power off and completely turning the power on with the cart's accessories, each time it turns off and turns on, it forgets many of the settings that you may have put into it. Now, that's not a lot of settings, but generally I like to have mine on Bluetooth mode. So when it boots up, it says AUX, and then it goes to AUX mode. So if I did want to pair directly to my amplifier, without giving it a dedicated 12 volt while asleep, I would need to hit this button, Bluetooth, to switch it to Bluetooth. And I also may need to increase my volume here 3 or 4 notches where it starts to be in about the right zone. Each time the amplifier resets, it goes back to AUX and back to a very middle volume level. So the next thing I noticed, and only while driving around, was that the rear soundbar had an increased level of noise. Hard to believe that that's true, that you could get more noise out of it, but somehow, after all that work, I created even more noise on this rear soundbar. I tried a collection of things, and that was running the amplifier off of a battery or running it off of the power from the cart. And I found when I ran the amplifier off of a battery, I did not get the same level of noise bar hum. So what's happening here with the soundbar is we are actually passing line in and line out through it. So our rear speaker low level input is actually running through our Bluetooth amplifier. And what seems to be happening is when we are powering this Bluetooth amplifier off of the wavy power inverter that comes stock on the Evolution cart, and we haven't added our own power source for it, this noisy power is going into our amplifier and it's running right along beside our low-level audio lines, and it's sending out noisy and even noisier noise to our soundbar. So I guess I fully underestimated that by powering a relatively cheap amplifier off of noisy 12-volt lines, that you would not introduce noise through your audio signal by passing it in and line out through this amplifier. So right now, that is another one of my biggest pain points. What happens on the soundbar is that if it detects any level of audio, it's at a certain threshold, it seems to tick on and attempt to amplify it. If it's below a certain threshold, it actually will tick off. The noise that's being generated by the amplifier, even if we're not listening to music, is loud enough that the soundbar attempts to tick on and it won't go to that off mode, that fully isolated mode where it just turns off. So that means as you're driving around, you have an annoying hum even when you're not listening to music. While the music is on, it disguises it, but you can still hear those noise frequencies being passed into the audio low-level inputs from the amplifier. I've tried simple things like these little clip-on ferrites to try to block the noise going in and out of the amplifier or in different places. I've even tried adding a RCA isolator in line. That seems to make no real difference. So I guess what I'm painfully learning here is that any audio equipment, whether it's our soundbar or our amplifier, would likely benefit from a reliable, noise-free 12-volt source with an independent and isolated ground and power. That will help us separate the noisiness that's going on in the controller. When you put your foot down on that gas pedal, our controller is located right here, and it is essentially modulating and doing tons of things with that ground line. And all of the accessories, the 12-volt inverter, the reducer that is on this cart is non-isolated. And so that means you are sharing grounds with everything that is going on. I tried adding one of these inexpensive, $15, $20 Amazon buck converters to give me a reliable 12 volt so that the amplifier wouldn't go to sleep. And then this way it would at least remember that I like Bluetooth and what my audio volume would be. However, yes, it gave me 12 volts and the audio system would remember my Bluetooth settings. It just did not isolate any of the noise. It's non-isolated and it's passing the same noise right on through to the amplifier. So adding a cheap buck converter like that to get you a little bit more power may be great for accessories like your headlights or a light bar, but it's not isolating any of that noise for audio equipment. The other thing that was worrying me about this buck converter is that the battery does run at about 52 volts, and sometimes during regen, there can even be spikes above that. And I was worried that these cheap buck converters may end up potentially overheating or breaking or melting down. I do think that a lot of the times they may skip official UL certifications and sometimes even exaggerate what voltage ratings they can handle. So being listed at 48 as the upper threshold, I was a little bit worried that I was potentially going to burn my cart down or have this melt or catch on fire, all because I didn't want to push a button to remember my Bluetooth settings. So because no matter what route I ended up going with the audio, even if we switch the amplifier for potentially something else in the future, I do likely need a dedicated 12-volt line. There's some things I want to do with a custom head unit, and for it to turn on and turn off quickly, it is going to need 12 volt to remember it. So I got to thinking maybe I should try a higher quality DC to DC reducer. So I ordered this Victron Energy 48 to 12 volt reducer. It has a 20 amp capacity, so relatively similar to what we are working with. However, this one is fully isolated, meaning the grounds are completely separate from anything that you plug into it. So this is going to be nice and calm and reduce any noise that would be going on our 12 volt line from the built-in voltage reducer. Victron Energy makes really high quality stuff, and you can see that the input rating on this is all the way up to 70 volts, and it'll output between 12 volts is what we need it to do. It also comes with a little bit of a remote or a relay trigger. So if we want to add a button so that it can come on and off and doesn't drain the battery while we don't need it to, that's no problem either. The only downfall is something like this is about $120 on Amazon. So it's definitely a little bit more expensive, but it is going to give us reliable and clean 12-volt power. So I did find when I installed this isolated DC to DC converter, it completely eliminated the noise while I'm out driving related to that soundbar. So as long as the amplifier was being powered off of a nice, reliable power source, the amplifier no longer introduced noise into the low-level signals that it was sending to the soundbar, and the soundbar sounded much better. Not perfect, but similar to how it does when it's stock, so it's very similar. After the amplifier was running off cleaner power, the isolated power, when I hit pause on my music, it was low enough in the noise threshold that the soundbar would actually tick off again, just like it usually does when it was set up in the stock way. So where I'm stuck at now is trying to figure out what I should recommend, because things are getting a little bit more complicated than I was originally hoping for this stage 1 install. One benefit, as we talked about before, of having our new isolated DC to DC reducer that we could use for audio systems and other things that we might want to have a constant 12 volt is potentially we could power the soundbar instead of powering the soundbar itself off the noisy noise, is it could also be powered off of our new, nice, quiet, isolated noise. That way the soundbar will likely sound even better. This wouldn't be a huge update to our wiring harness because we do pass the power lead straight through. Potentially we could splice it off with a little connector and plug it into our new clean power source. But that's why I wanted to reach out and see if anybody in the community has come across this same issue. Do you have any other ideas of things I should try? One thought was possibly instead of routing the low-level audio through the amplifier, if I just splice into the line and allow a line in on the amplifier, but allow the signal to continue on to the soundbar, not passing the rear soundbar audio through it. The downfall of that is that we wouldn't be able to run our Bluetooth audio directly to the amplifier. We would need to always go Bluetooth through the head unit. Those of you with CarPlay and things like that would probably say, well, that's what you want to do anyways, is just route the audio through the head unit. To be honest, when I started this project, I thought that the majority of the noise was being caused by the head unit, and now all of this equipment is causing the noise. So possibly switching to a style where we don't route the RCAs through the amplifier with RCA in and RCA out, but just tap into the lead may work as a quick hack fix instead. The only other thing that I'm thinking could be the root of a problem and a quick solve is if we didn't go with this amplifier.
Bluetooth.
This amplifier is going to speak words to you every time you turn it on, and there's no real way around that. It does seem like it's the amplifier that's introducing the noise into our low-level audio, even though it's likely possibly going to do the same with different amplifiers. So I have ordered another amplifier off Amazon. It's a slightly more expensive kind of $100 version instead of this $50 version, and I'm gonna give that a try too on the weekend and see if that potentially is a better route, because if we can find an amplifier that can memorize its presets, not speak to us, and not introduce noise, that would simplify the overall install as well as to not have to find a more calm source of power. So as a software developer, I learned my lesson that audio in golf carts is not easy. I thought it was going to be easy, but it is not. To get something that sounds great, works great, and is flawless is going to be a lot of little tweaks, and I definitely did not get it right the first time. We will get this figured out though, because I definitely think we're on the right track. These speakers sound great, a little bit more amplification. The combination of the front and rear do really work well. It has perfect potential and does work well when the power is stable. So hang tight, we're gonna figure out how to fix this thing up, and then we'll have some final recommendations that you guys can follow and have a known good working system. So again, add in the comments down below if you guys have found a way to make your audio system work well. If you found a way to normalize that power, is the go-to always just a separate battery, what do we think about my isolated DC to DC reducer. Any advice you guys have, let me know. Appreciate it, and I'll update you with how this goes after the weekend.